Replay the scenario with me real quick. So I'm at a work happy hour. It's a very nice bar, food and drink is going on the corporate card, so everyone's a little bit tipsy. I'm nervous and awkward and nervous again, but I'm determined to network. So somehow I make myself into a group of very important people, and everybody's talking about the shows that they're currently watching. One guy tells us about a true crime series he's just finished. Another mentions a critically acclaimed sci-fi thriller or political documentary. Then they kindly turn to me. What am I watching? It's funny you should ask. It's actually a very heartfelt story about three triplets that move in with their grouchy but extremely wealthy great uncle, who was once this renowned explorer. Sinister forces drive him out of retirement and back into adventuring, bringing along with him the next generation, hence his nephews. It's about family, greed, growth. It is DuckTales. It is DuckTales, by the way. I'm watching the remake of DuckTales. Okay, so it's a semi-fun icebreaker, I like to think, but it is actually kind of hard to talk to other adults when my TV consumption is primarily animated and a lot of the times actually targeted towards children. There's many reasons for this, I'm sure, but I can't help noticing that this is a trend for neurodivergent people. Summer Camp Island, Steven Universe, Adventure Time, Gravity Falls, Craig of the Creek, Owl House, Infinity Train, We Bare Bears, Bluey. All these shows have dedicated adult audiences and communities, and many of those audiences have expressed online on things like online forums that, Bluey is their special interest, their hyperfixation, their comfort show. A lot of them share this experience as somebody with autism, ADHD, PTSD, mental illness, etc. I've also seen this anecdotally as somebody that's very involved in the disability community and am neurodivergent myself. So it got me wondering where this connection comes from. What is it about animated shows that appeals to neurodivergent adults and why? Where are these communities finding each other? Is there a non-awkward way for me to tell my professional colleagues that tonight I will be rewatching We Bare Bears for the 10th time? I started researching, fell down the rabbit hole, and what I found both was surprising and made a lot of sense. So let's get into it. To start, I revisited some of my favorite kids' cartoons, and yeah, this might have just been an excuse to rewatch my comfort shows. Most of these aired on Cartoon Network, the holy grail of vibey animation. According to Warner Brothers themselves, Cartoon Network's target audience is boys and girls aged 6 to 12, with the ultimate goal of letting them be themselves. But that doesn't tell the whole picture. An article by Deadline put out in March explained that during Cartoon Network's 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. programming block, 68% of viewers were over the age of 18. The president of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim was also quoted saying, "Animation can both speak to multiple age groups in the moment and also find new audiences across decades." The early Cartoon Network originals were examples of shows that did both. So I'm not alone, and when you look at traits exhibited by people with ADHD, autism, and other neurodivergencies, it makes sense. First, let's look at We Bare Bears since I have my ice bear here. Right off the bat, you'll notice the simple, cute visuals. Obviously, I'm not saying that an aesthetic preference equates to neurodiversity. Also, preference is a thing within all neurotypes. But there is a reason that animation like this is disproportionately appealing to people that experience both over and under stimulation. Look at this still. It's colorful yet relaxing with almost slightly muted colors. With animation, things don't tend to just show up in the background, Somebody has to draw them, a lot of the times pretty painstakingly. So there tends to be less clutter and distraction. The object of focus is intentional and pretty clear typically. I run into confusion from others sometimes because I can listen to really loud music in the car but then might get overstimulated the moment I walk into a grocery store. I kind of have to explain this that for me, it's all about the layers of noise and activity a lot more than it's about something like volume. Cartoons really scratch this itch in my brain because the stimulation level tends to be just right. You know, you're getting to be stimulated, but at the same time, it is kind of muted and calming. For once, it's so easy to focus, and it's also pretty easy to understand. Facial emotion recognition is a pretty typical impairment. Neurodivergent adults with autism, but also other disorders, often struggle understanding things like voice intonation and body language. This makes understanding people and actors pretty difficult, but research is actually showing that this might not be the case with animation. Psychologists at Edge Hill University conducted a reading mind in the eyes test on both an autistic group and a neurotypical one. This means they showed pictures of real eyes expressing various emotions, and then both groups basically had to identify what those emotions were. Autistic people typically perform pretty poorly on this test, but then they tried something new. They showed both groups cartoon eyes expressing various emotions, and the autistic group actually performed significantly better. Now, obviously, more research needs to be done before we can actually do anything with this, but think about it. Ice Bear here is the least expressive of the group. He's kind of notoriously understated, and this is how he expresses anger, confusion, happiness, shyness. Animated characters might just be easier for us to understand and connect with. Now, let's move on to the shows themselves. An episode of Gravity Falls typically runs for 20 minutes. Summer Camp Island runs at 12. Bluey runs at 7. Come on, of course this is appealing to those of us with attention issues. Instead of getting 15 minutes into a movie and then getting distracted, I can watch an entire self-contained plot. And most of the time, I don't even have to remember what happened in the previous episode. Not only that, but the plots feel very safe, and often there are many episodes if you're lucky. So if you're somebody with a need for routine, these are pretty perfect. They give a consistent show with little risk. Relatively little. Cartoons are a must for me when I'm experiencing any kind of mid-level sensory or emotional overwhelm. You know, I want something that's consistent and calming and that I can trust, but at the same time, I'm not the kind of person that watches the same movie over and over again. That's the ADHD. Kids animated shows are perfect for this. There are a ton of episodes, and while shows vary, most summon the same comforting feeling for me. They're easy to trust emotionally because they know what their audience expects and typically play to it with happy endings. Speaking of, let's talk about that idea of emotional safety. Neurodivergent people often experience really intense emotions and loneliness. And a lot of the times these communities offer a group that might be more welcoming than we're used to. Things like info dumping might be socially acceptable, hence this video. There's huge crossover between the disabled and queer communities. Jessica Kellgren-Fozard actually has a great video on that, so you should check it out. I'll link it below. One of the first times I ever saw non-binary representation was in Cartoon Network's Craig of the Creek. And as far as I know, Disney's only queer main character is Luce from the Owl House. The space just tends to be more receptive and open to diverse voices. Community boards are full of discussions and fan art, and it feels good to be part of something. It feels good to be able to show up to that space unmasked. It feels good to not be made fun of for having childish interests or behaviors. You know, outsiders or critics can look in all they want, you know, the people that would never unironically watch a show like Bluey, and they can say that it's weird and make fun of us, but I never felt safe among those people anyway. Also, a lot of the times those critics of animation are okay with it and okay with kid shows as long as they're nostalgic. You know, they're the people saying, they don't make shows like this anymore, and it's like, yes they do, turn on Cartoon Network, it's that easy. Why do you think we got that horrible live-action Powerpuff pilot script? It makes me think of all those wild fan theories online, you know, like, your favorite Winnie the Pooh character may have a much deeper meaning. Or Phineas and Ferb theory explains why Candace has schizophrenia. These theories are in good fun, I guess, but for me they represent a pretty big misunderstanding from typically neurotypical people. Animation reminds us of childhood and simplicity, so when adults enjoy it, it's like they have to look for some secret reason why they enjoyed it. I think this is also why we have a lot of adult animation that ends up being really ugly. It's like there has to be this level of irony for some reason. But sometimes a show is just about imagination, family, growing up. You know, these are universal emotions that can really only be expressed well with the simplest of stories. There doesn't have to be a deeper meaning. It's okay for there just to be like two brothers that are enjoying summer vacation by doing crazy things. Like, I don't know. How does it feel for y'all not to understand for once? Maybe I'm being too harsh to neurotypical people. You know, I do like them. But what do you think? Are you a part of any of these online communities? Do you watch kids shows or cartoons? And why do you think you like them so much? Do you think your neurotype plays a role, or am I just entirely off base? You know, let me know either way. I'm just trying to start a conversation here. That's what we're looking to do at The Cozy Chaotic. And I have multiple other video essays touching on other kind of cozy topics. So if that's something that would interest you, check them out. And also take a second, you know, like, comment, subscribe, help me out. I'm a small channel, so it means a lot. All right. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.